August 7, 1942. The dense jungle canopy above Tulagi Island, just across the channel from Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. The air hangs heavy with humidity, thick as a wet blanket, carrying the sharp tang of salt from the crashing waves below and the earthy rot of decaying leaves underfoot. Sergeant Hiroshi Tanaka crouches behind a cluster of mangrove roots, his Type 99 rifle clutched tightly in sweat-slicked hands, his uniform plastered to his skin from the relentless tropical downpour that had ended only hours before. At 28 years old, Tanaka is a veteran of the Imperial Japanese Army's 35th Infantry Regiment, hardened by campaigns in China, where victory came through sheer will and bayonet charges. His squadmates, Corporal Kenji Sato, barely 20 with wide eyes hidden under his steel helmet, and Private First Class Akira Yamamoto, a stocky farm boy from Hokkaido, huddle nearby, their breaths shallow, fingers hovering near grenade pins. The distant rumble they've been hearing isn't thunder, it's something mechanical, unnatural, slicing through the dawn chorus of squawking birds and buzzing insects. You can almost feel it yourself, the ground vibrating faintly as the first hints of the invasion unfold. Tanaka peers through the fronds, his binoculars fogged slightly from the moisture, wiping them frantically with a rag torn from his puttees. Below, on the beaches of Guadalcanal proper, the horizon fills with shapes that defy his training. American landing craft, dozens of them, Higgins boats with their ramps dropping like jaws, spew forth not just men in olive-drab fatigues, but machines, trucks, endless trucks. GMC-2 1-2-ton cargo haulers, their 6x6 wheels churning through the surf, engines growling like awakened beasts as they haul crates of ammunition, rolls of barbed wire, and fuel drums up the coral-strewn sand. Jeeps zip between them, towing 37mm anti-tank guns, their drivers shouting orders over the din. Amphibious DUKWs, those bizarre duck-like vehicles, waddle from sea to shore, loaded with artillery pieces and medical supplies, their propellers whirring as they transition seamlessly from waves to land. Tanaka's heart pounds in his chest, a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. "What sorcery is this?" he mutters to Sato, who stares open-mouthed, his Arisaka rifle forgotten in his lap. In all their briefings from Tokyo, the Americans were painted as soft, reliant on technology, but lacking the Bushido spirit. Yet here, before the sun has fully crested the palm-fringed hills, the beach transforms into a hive of activity. Bulldozers, massive Caterpillar D7s with armored cabs, roar to life, blades scraping away jungle undergrowth to carve out airstrips, their diesel exhaust mingling with the scent of churned soil. Cranes swing from transport ships, lowering more vehicles, Willys MB Jeeps fitted with 50-caliber machine guns, half-tracks like the M3 with their tracked rears gripping the uneven terrain. The numbers stagger him, one truck for every handful of soldiers, it seems, while his own unit relies on pack mules and human porters straining under rice sacks and ammunition boxes through muddy trails. Gunfire erupts sporadically as American Marines, tall figures in herringbone twill utilities, M1 Garands slung over shoulders, fan out, securing the perimeter. A Japanese sniper from a nearby outpost fires a shot, dropping a Marine, but the response is immediate. A barrage from a mounted Browning M1919 on a jeep shreds the foliage, silencing the threat. Tanaka signals his men to hold position. Their orders are to observe and report, not engage yet. But inside, doubt creeps in like the vines wrapping the trees around them. Back in Manchuria, victories came from outmaneuvering the enemy on foot, striking fast with limited supplies. Here, the Americans don't march. They roll. Supplies pour ashore not in trickles, but torrents. Canned rations, jerry cans of gasoline, even field kitchens unfolding from truck beds, the smell of hot coffee wafting improbably across the channel on the breeze. As the morning wears on, the scale becomes overwhelming. Tanaka counts over 100 vehicles in the first wave alone, more than his entire battalion has seen in years. A Ford GPW Jeep races past a cluster of palms, its radio crackling with commands from officers like Major General Alexander Vandegrift, coordinating the 1st Marine Division's assault. The machines multiply. Machner M5 tractors pulling howitzers, Studebaker US-6 trucks laden with bridging equipment to span rivers. Sato whispers, "They fight with iron beasts, Sergeant. How many factories must they have?" Yamamoto nods, his face pale under the camouflage net draped over his helmet. The jungle heat intensifies, mosquitoes swarming, but Tanaka can't tear his eyes away. This isn't an army, it's an industrial flood, men augmented by steel and rubber, moving with a speed that mocks the foot-slogging endurance of the Imperial forces. By midday, the beachhead expands, tents rising like mushrooms after rain, supply dumps stacking higher than a man's height. A low-flying Grumman F-4F Wildcat buzzes overhead, its shadow flickering across the vehicles below, a reminder that air support follows this mechanical tide. Tanaka lowers his binoculars, his mind racing. Reports must go back to headquarters in Rabaul, warnings of this army of machines that could shift the war's balance. Little does he know, this is just the beginning, a glimpse of the logistical juggernaut that will drown Japan's ambitions in the Pacific. The sounds of engines fade into the afternoon haze, but the image burns in his memory, trucks outnumbering soldiers, a silent promise of endless reinforcement. August 25, 1942. The stifling command bunker beneath Rabaul on New Britain Island, carved into volcanic rock, slick with condensation, the air thick with the acrid smoke of unfiltered cigarettes, and the faint metallic tang of radio equipment overheating in the tropical swelter. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a sharp-featured intelligence officer in his mid-40s with a reputation for ruthless analysis from the China campaigns, leans over a scarred wooden table cluttered with maps of the Solomons, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the dim glow of a single kerosene lamp. Around him, staff officers from the 17th Army, Captain Ichiro Yamamoto, fresh from field reports, and Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake himself, the commander, pacing in his khaki uniform adorned with rising sun insignia, pore over dispatches arriving via encrypted telegrams and weary couriers drenched in sweat from the journey. You feel the tension coiling like the humidity outside, where palm trees sway under a relentless sun and distant anti-aircraft guns thump sporadically against probing Allied bombers. Tsuji's fingers trace the inked lines on the map marking Guadalcanal, his mind replaying Sergeant Tanaka's hurried report, smuggled back through submarine channels. Enemy vehicles exceed 500 on first day, motors everywhere, supplies inexhaustible. He exhales sharply, crushing a cigarette butt under his boot. "This is no exaggeration," Tsuji declares, his voice cutting through the murmur of aides scribbling notes. Hyakutake stops pacing, his face etched with lines from years of island garrisons, fixing Tsuji with a stare. "Trucks outnumbering our rifles? Absurd. Our troops fight with spirit, theirs with gadgets." But the evidence piles up like the crates in American depots. Yamamoto, the captain, unrolls a captured American pamphlet, snatched from a downed pilot's kit during a skirmish, detailing the Lend-Lease pipelines feeding the invasion. Pages illustrate assembly lines in Detroit, Ford plants churning out 4,000 Jeeps a month, GM factories stamping out CCKW trucks by the thousands, their V8 engines tested on conveyor belts before shipping across oceans in Liberty ships. "Look here, sir," Yamamoto urges, pointing to sketches of the Red Ball Express concept already in planning, routes marked for rapid resupply. Hyakutake grunts, recalling his own force's reliance on the Tokyo Express, destroyers dashing supplies under cover of night, often sunk by prowling submarines like the USS Nautilus. Outside the bunker, the harbor bustles with activity. Zero fighters being refueled on cracked aprons, their Mitsubishi engines idling with a high-pitched whine, while laborers, conscripted Koreans and locals, haul rice bales and 75mm shells by hand, backs bent under the weight. Tsuji steps out briefly, the blast of heat hitting him like a wall, watching a column of Type 95 Hago tanks, mere 7-ton lightweights with 37mm guns, being loaded onto barges for reinforcement runs, only a dozen in total for the entire theater, their tracks clanking rustily compared to the Allied behemoths. Back inside, he slams a fist on the table. Their industrial avalanche. It's real. Tanaka saw DUKWs swimming ashore like fish, bulldozers leveling jungle in hours what would take our engineers days with picks and shovels. Ayakutake nods slowly, summoning radio operators to relay orders, conserve ammunition, strike at night with infiltrators armed with Type 97 grenades and lunge mines. But doubt lingers in the air, heavy as the monsoon clouds gathering on the horizon. A young ensign, Ensign Taro Nakamura, monitors intercepted signals, American voices crackling over SCR 300 radios mounted in those ubiquitous jeeps, coordinating movements with precision. They're moving 10 tons per truck convoy, Nakamura reports, his voice hushed. Our mules carry 100 pounds each, and half die on the trails. Tsuji sketches countermeasures, ambushes on supply lines, satchel charges tossed under chassis, but he knows the math. The U.S. produced over 800,000 vehicles in 1942 alone, while Japan's output scraped 20,000, hampered by resource shortages and Allied bombings on Honshu factories. As evening falls, the bunker echoes with strategy sessions. Hayakutake dictates a cable to Tokyo, urging more ships, more planes, but Imperial headquarters responds with platitudes about divine wind and unbreakable will. Tsuji lights another cigarette, staring at a photo of Guadalcanal's Henderson Field now under American control, ringed by anti-aircraft batteries towed by those endless trucks. The shock from Tanaka's eyes has spread here, a virus of realization. Japan's army marches on foot through mud and malaria. America's rolls on rubber tires fueled by endless oil from Texas wells. Thunder rumbles outside. Not bombs this time, but nature mocking their predicament, as plans form for counterattacks. Banzai charges against machine gun nests bolted to truck beds. Yet in quiet moments, officers like Tsuji wonder, how do you bayonet a factory? The meeting drags into the night, lamps flickering, coffee rationed in tin cups tasting of rust. Reports filter in from scouts, American engineers using Alice Chalmers graders, extending runways where Wildcats land with fresh pilots and bombs. Supplies stack in pyramids, K-rations, medical plasma in refrigerated vans powered by generators humming on flatbeds. Hyakutake finally adjourns, his orders crisp. Harass, delay, bleed them. But as Tsuji beds down on a cot, the whir of imagined engines haunts him, a prelude to the broader awakening across the Pacific. November 19th, 1942. The mosquito-infested swamps of Buna on the northern coast of New Guinea, where the Papuan jungle meets the sea in a tangle of sago palms and knee-deep mud that sucks at boots like quicksand. Private Yoshio Nakamura, a 22-year-old infantryman from the 144th Regiment, wipes the grime from his face with a rag soaked in brackish water, his Type 100 submachine gun slung across his chest, its barrel still warm from sporadic exchanges. The air reeks of cordite, rotting vegetation, and the faint coppery scent of blood from fallen comrades buried hastily in shallow graves. Nakamura's platoon, led by Lieutenant Saburo Tanaka, no relation to the sergeant from Guadalcanal, but equally resolute, entrenches in coconut log bunkers reinforced with coral rubble, peering out at the Allied lines through slits camouflaged with fronds. The rain pours in sheets, turning the ground into a slurry that drowns foxholes and soaks through their thin cotton uniforms, chilling them despite the equatorial heat. You can sense the desperation building, the way the mud clings to everything, mirroring the sticky dread in Nakamura's gut, as distant engines growl louder than the thunder. From his vantage, he spots the first signs, American and Australian troops advancing not in waves of men, but preceded by an armada of machines. Sherman tanks, massive M4s with 75mm cannons, rumble forward, their Continental radial engines belching smoke, treads crushing undergrowth as they ford streams swollen by the monsoon. But it's the trucks that truly horrify him. Endless convoys of Dodge WC series, their canvas tops flapping in the wind, hauling 105mm howitzers and crates of 30-06 ammunition. Engineers in the 32nd Infantry Division, under General Douglas MacArthur's oversight, deploy Bailey bridges assembled from truck-delivered panels, spanning rivers in hours where Japanese sappers would labor days with bamboo and rope. Nakamura fires a burst from his submachine gun, the recoil jarring his shoulder, as an Australian Bren gunner falls from a jeep-mounted position. But retaliation comes swift. A .50 caliber from an M2 half-track sweeps the bunker line, splintering logs and forcing his squad to duck low, ears ringing from the impacts. Lieutenant Tanaka shouts orders over the cacophony. "Hold the line! Banzai if they breach!" Yet Nakamura's eyes widen at the spectacle unfolding behind enemy positions. Supply dumps materialize overnight, trucks like the Chevrolet G506 unloading pallets of sea rations, medical kits with sulfa powder, and even portable generators powering searchlights that pierce the night raids. Amphibious LVTs, alligators with their tracked hulls, ferry more vehicles across inlets, their Detroit diesel engines humming reliably, untouched by the salt corrosion that plagues Japanese motors. As the battle intensifies, Nakamura witnesses the true disparity. His unit's supplies arrive sporadically via the bamboo fleet, rickety barges from Rabaul, often strafed by P-38 Lightnings, leaving them rationed to a handful of rice balls per day, malaria felling more men than bullets. In contrast, the Allies feast on Spam and biscuits from refrigerated trailers towed by Mack trucks, their medics evacuating wounded via jeep ambulances equipped with plasma bags and morphine syrettes. A bulldozer, a John Deere Model M with armored plating, clears a path through the kunai grass, its blade shoving aside felled trees as if they were matchsticks, allowing fresh troops from the 126th Infantry to rotate in without fatigue. Gunfire echoes through the canopy, Japanese 70mm infantry guns barking in response, but their shells fall short, ammunition conserved for desperate moments. Nakamura reloads, his hands trembling not from fear but exhaustion, having marched 50 miles on foot through leech-infested trails to reach this hell. Meanwhile, American GIs ride in comfort, Willys jeeps with wire cutters on bumpers zipping medics to the front, their radios coordinating airstrikes from Kitty Hawks overhead. Tanaka leads a night counterattack, bayonets fixed, screaming into the dark, but they collide with barbed wire entanglements unrolled from truck spools, illuminated by flares launched from M3 mortar tubes on half-tracks. By dawn, the toll mounts. Nakamura drags a wounded comrade, Corporal Jiro Sato, back to their lines, Sato's leg shattered by shrapnel from a 105mm long tom howitzer, its massive barrel towed by a prime mover truck that seems impervious to the terrain. Medics in their unit apply crude bandages, whispering prayers to Amaterasu, while across the field, American surgeons operate in mobile hospitals unfolded from van bodies, sterilizing instruments with autoclaves run on gasoline generators. The trucks keep coming. Studebaker 2. 1 2-tonners loaded with engineering tools, building airstrips where C-47 Dakotas land with more reinforcements, their props whirring as cargo doors disgorge yet more vehicles. Tanaka gathers his remaining men, faces gaunt under mud-streaked helmets, sharing tales of the machine army that devours distance and time. They don't fight, they overwhelm, Nakamura mutters, watching a convoy snake through the cleared paths, horns blaring signals. Reports from captured prisoners, rare but telling, speak of factories in California and Michigan producing 50,000 trucks a year, shipped via convoys guarded by destroyers like the USS Fletcher. As artillery duels resume, the ground shaking from impacts, Nakamura realizes the war has shifted. Japan's soldiers bleed in isolation, while America's logistics vein pulses endlessly, trucks outnumbering not just their army, but their very dreams of victory. The campaign drags on, bunkers collapsing under tank treads, the air filled with the whine of incoming shells. Tanaka falls in a futile charge, his sword raised against a wall of steel. Nakamura survives barely, retreating into the jungle's embrace, but the image of those trucks, symbols of an unyielding industrial might, sears into his soul, a harbinger of defeats to come across the vast Pacific theater. November 20th, 1943. The coral-fringed lagoon of Betio Island in the Tarawa Atoll, Gilbert Islands, where turquoise waters lap against reefs now churned into frothy red by naval bombardment and incoming tides. Captain Takeshi Mori, a 35-year-old officer from the Imperial Japanese Navy's Special Naval Landing Forces, clings to the lip of his concrete pillbox, his Type 96 light machine gun mounted on a swivel, its belt feed clinking as he adjusts aim. The air vibrates with the thunder of 16-inch guns from battleships like the USS Maryland offshore, shells whistling overhead to explode in geysers of sand and shrapnel. Mori's uniform, salt-stiffened and torn at the sleeves, sticks to his skin in the blistering sun. The scent of gunpowder mixing with the briny spray and the acrid burn of cordite from his own artillery pieces. Coastal 8-inch Vickers guns salvaged from Singapore, their barrels glowing hot after hours of firing. You taste the salt on your lips, feel the tremors as another salvo lands, dislodging chunks of reinforced concrete from the bunker walls. Mori's men, Sergeant Koji Ikeda, a wiry veteran with a scarred cheek from Guadalcanal, and Private Haruto Suzuki, fresh from training in Yokohama, his hands blistered from digging trenches, As night falls, the fighting turns savage, hand to hand in the dark, bayonets clashing against entrenching tools. Mori leads a countercharge, his Nambu pistol cracking, felling a Marine, but they retreat under illumination from star shells fired from truck-mounted mortars. By dawn, the beachhead expands. Bulldozers like the International TD-18 pushing aside palm stumps and Japanese dead to clear landing zones. C-47s drone overhead, dropping parachutes laden with more supplies, but it's the ground logistics that dominate. Mack Brothers trucks hauling fuel bladders, ensuring Shermans refuel without pause, their 500-horsepower engines roaring as they blast bunkers point blank. Ikeda falls to a sniper's bullet, his body crumpling beside the machine gun, Suzuki taking over with trembling hands. Mori fights on, grenading an advancing half-track, its explosion lighting the night, but another replaces it, M3A1 scout car with 50 cal sweeping the area. Reports from adjacent positions via field telephones, wires often cut by shelling, speak of the same. Trucks outnumbering defenders, enabling Marines to rotate fresh platoons while Japanese forces exhaust themselves in static defense. Admiral Keiji Shibasaki's headquarters, deep in a bomb-proof shelter, receives Mori's urgent message. Enemy machines overwhelm our positions, supplies infinite. The atoll's flat terrain offers no respite, the heat rising to 100 degrees, men collapsing from dehydration while Americans sip from canteens replenished by water purification units on truck chassis. Mori witnesses a DUKW delivering mail, letters from home boosting morale, as if this were a parade, not a slaughter. His men share whispers of despair, comparing their bicycle-transported messages to the enemy's motorized couriers. As the third day dawns, naval gunfire resumes, coordinated by spotters in jeeps with whip antennas. Mori's bunker shakes, cracks spiderwebbing the walls, but he holds, firing until ammunition dwindles. In the end, Tarawa falls in 76 hours, Mori among the few survivors captured, his mind reeling from the vehicular horde that turned tide pools into highways. Interrogated aboard a transport, he learns of Detroit's output, 600,000 jeeps alone, enabling mobility Japan could never match. The trucks, those unassuming workhorses, had ferried victory ashore, a mechanical tide eroding Imperial Resolve island by island. October 20th, 1944. The choppy waters off Leyte Island in the Philippines, where the Gulf's currents swirl with debris from the massive naval clash unfolding miles offshore. Lieutenant Commander Akira Fujita, a 32-year-old staff officer aboard the battleship Yamato, Japan's pride with its 18-inch guns thundering in the distance, stands on the bridge wing, binoculars pressed to his eyes, his navy blue uniform crisp despite the salt spray misting the deck. The air crackles with radio static and the deep booms of artillery exchanges, carrying the sharp ozone scent of expended powder and the oily tang of bunker fuel leaking from stricken vessels. Fujita's colleagues, Captain Toshio Abe, barking orders to gunnery crews, and Ensign Minoru Hayashi, monitoring radar scopes flickering with blips of the American Third Fleet, share the tension, their faces illuminated by the flash of distant explosions. You hear the roar of aircraft engines overhead, Zeros and Hellcats dogfighting in the smoky sky, but Fujita's focus shifts to the invasion beaches below. Through the haze, he sees the American Armada's true weapon, not the carriers or destroyers, but the logistical tail uncoiling like a serpent. LSTs and LSMs grind onto the sand, hatches yawning to release floods of vehicles, trucks by the hundreds, Chevrolet CMPs and GMC AFKWs, their tires kicking up coral dust as they race inland laden with 81mm mortar rounds and jerry cans of aviation gasoline. Amphibious ducks weave through the surf, delivering crates of 45 ACP ammunition to Rangers securing the perimeter, their propellers churning water into foam. Fujita lowers his binoculars, a knot forming in his stomach as he recalls the Battle of the Philippine Sea earlier that year, where carrier losses crippled Japan's air arm. Now, on Leyte, under General MacArthur's return, the disparity glares. His own forces, the center force under Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, steam through San Bernardino Strait with limited supplies, fuel rationed to the gallon, shells counted per salvo, while the Americans resupply at will. On the beaches, engineers from the Sixth Army deploy pontoon causeways assembled from truck-transported sections, allowing more vehicles to pour ashore. Dodge command cars with mounted radios directing airstrikes from P-51 Mustangs, their wings glinting as they strafe Japanese positions. Aboard Yamato, Hayashi reports intercepted signals. American voices on AN-ARC-5 sets in jeeps, coordinating with offshore supply ships like the USS Altair, unloading pallets via cranes onto waiting barges. "They're moving 20,000 tons a day, sir," Hayashi says, his voice laced with awe. Fujita nods, knowing Japan's convoys from Singapore limp in sporadically, harried by submarines like the USS Darter, leaving troops on Leyte to forage for coconuts and boil rainwater. In contrast, U.S. soldiers chow down on hot meals from field kitchens towed by Rio trucks, morale buoyed by PX supplies, cigarettes, chocolate, even newspapers, delivered fresh. The Gulf echoes with the clash. Kurita's fleet engages, Yamato's massive turrets swiveling to target destroyers, but American PT boats and aircraft harass relentlessly, fueled by depots on floating barges serviced by tankers. Fujita witnesses a supply convoy slipping through, Liberty ships escorted by DEs, disgorging more trucks onto Leyte's roads, now being graded by Caterpillar D8 dozers with Rome plows clearing jungle. Infantry advances behind this veil, the 1st Cavalry Division mounted on jeeps with 30 cal Brownings, outflanking Japanese defenders who trudge on foot, packs heavy with minimal gear. Abe orders evasive maneuvers as torpedoes streak by, but Fujita's mind races to the broader picture. Intelligence from Manila speaks of U.S. production peaks, over 3 million vehicles by 1944, assembly lines in Willow Run churning B-24s and trucks alike, while Japan's output stalls at under 50,000, factories bombed to rubble. On land, General Tomoyuki Yamashita's 14th Area Army digs in with 75mm mountain guns hauled by oxen, but American M7 Priest self-propelled guns, towed initially by prime movers, bombard from miles away, shells supplied endlessly. As dusk falls, the battle rages. Musashi sinks under aerial onslaught, her decks aflame, but on Leyte, the trucks conquer. Fujita sees flares illuminating convoys snaking through valleys, hauling bridging equipment to span rivers, enabling armored columns like M4A3 Shermans to press forward. Wounded are evacuated swiftly in WC-54 ambulances, sirens wailing, while Japanese casualties lie in agony, medics out of bandages. Hayashi whispers of deserters' tales. "Their machines never stop, Commander. One truck falls, 10 replace it." Kurita withdraws after heavy losses, Yamato limping away, but Leyte is lost. Fujita, staring at the receding shoreline dotted with vehicle lights like fireflies, grasps the irony. Japan's samurai spirit clashes against Detroit's assembly lines, logistics the silent victor. Reports to Tokyo paint the picture, trucks outnumbering imperial divisions, paving the road to Manila and beyond. The Gulf's waters calm, but the mechanical tide surges on, unstoppable. April 1st, 1945. The rugged cliffs of Okinawa Island, Ryukyu Chain, where jagged karst formations overlook the East China Sea, waves crashing against reefs now littered with the hulks of kamikaze-struck ships. Major Kenjiro Sato, a 40-year-old commander in the 32nd Army, hunkers in a cave command post honeycombed into the limestone hills, his field cap dusted with chalky soil, a Type 14 pistol holstered at his side. The air inside is dank, laced with the sulphurous fumes of gunpowder and the musty odor of unwashed bodies packed tight. His staff officers, like Captain Hiroshi Nakamura scribbling maps by candlelight, and Lieutenant Yuji Tanaka monitoring faint radio signals crackling through interference. Outside, the incessant roar of naval barrages from the U.S. Fifth Fleet shakes the ground, dislodging pebbles that rattle down like rain. You feel the earth tremble underfoot, the way hope crumbles with each explosion as Sato peers through a camouflaged observation slit at the invasion below. The beaches swarm with the 10th Army's assault, but it's the vehicular deluge that crushes his spirit. Thousands of trucks disgorging from LSDs and LSTs, Ford GPA seeps splashing ashore, followed by columns of M25 Dragon wagons hauling 240-meter howitzers, their massive tires grinding coral into powder. UKWs ferry supplies through the breakers, unloading at depots where cranes swing from Liberty ships, stacking ammunition higher than the palm groves. Sato's forces, under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, defend with dug-in 47mm anti-tank guns and human wave tactics, but the math betrays them. Japan's entire vehicle pool for the home islands numbers in the low thousands, scavenged and fuel-starved, while America's output hits 4 million by war's end. Nakamura hands Sato a report from forward observers. Enemy trucks form endless lines, Major. They carry everything: flamethrowers, bulldozers, even ice cream machines. Sato grimaces, recalling earlier defeats, his own unit's trucks, scant Type 94s, abandoned for lack of parts, soldiers reduced to pulling artillery by hand through muddy paddies. Below, American GIs from the 77th Infantry Division advance behind a screen of machines. M8 Greyhound armored cars scouting paths, their 30mm guns pivoting, while CCKW trucks tow anti-aircraft batteries that shred incoming Zeros. Engineers deploy Marston matting from flatbeds, laying instant airstrips where P-47 Thunderbolts land, refueled by Bowser trucks pumping 100-octane Avgas. The battle grinds on through April's rains, caves echoing with the chatter of Nambu machine guns, but Allied logistics prevail. Sato's men ration bullets, 1 magazine per day, foraging yams and drinking from contaminated streams, malaria rampant. In contrast, U.S. field hospitals and trailer vans operate with X-ray machines powered by generators, surgeons gloved and masked, saving lives while Japanese wounded perish in agony. Jeeps with loudspeakers blare propaganda, towing trailers of leaflets, as convoys snake up Hagushi Beach roads, cleared by D-7 dozers shoving aside debris from Oka suicide bombs. By June, the island's southern tip becomes a killing ground, Ushijima's headquarters besieged. Sato leads a desperate breakout, katana in hand, charging into walls of flame from M4A3E8 Shermans with HVSS suspension, their 76mm guns fed shells from trailing ammo trucks. Tanaka falls to a burst from a jeep-mounted M1919, Nakamura captured, whispering to interrogators of the iron flood that buried their defenses. Okinawa falls on June 22nd, 110,000 Japanese dead, the costliest battle, but the trucks, symbols of inexhaustible supply, pave the way for Operation Downfall's planning. Fast forward to August 6th, Hiroshima's ruins, then Nagasaki on the 9th, but in Tokyo's Imperial Palace bunkers, the awakening culminates. Emperor Hirohito, advised by remnants like Prime Minister Suzuki, reviews reports, American factories untouched, churning vehicles for invasion fleets amassing in the Philippines. Surrender broadcasts on August 15th, the Emperor's voice crackling over radios, acknowledging the new and most cruel bomb, but unspoken is the logistical stranglehold, trucks that outnumbered armies, delivering not just bombs, but the weight of industrial supremacy. In the quiet aftermath, survivors like Sato, if he lived, reflect in POW camps, watching Allied convoys rebuild, trucks hauling rice for starving civilians, a bitter irony. The Pacific War ends not with a bang, but with the hum of engines,